Emma nodded. I do too. Every day. Their eyes met, not in the way lovers meet, but in the way two people do when they've both been lost in the same storm. For the first time since the accident, she didn't feel like she was carrying her grief alone. Someone else understood the silence, the sleepless nights, the feeling of walking through life half awake. She stood and went to refill their cups just to do something with her hands. When she came back, Ethan was staring at the photograph on the mantel, the three of them smiling on a camping trip. David had his arm around both of them, his grin wide and carefree. Remember that? Emma said softly, setting down his cup. You two tried to start a fire and nearly burned the tent. Ethan laughed quietly, the sound breaking the heaviness between them. He said he knew what he was doing. I still don't think he ever did. Emma smiled. He didn't. But he made it look like he did. The laughter faded, but the warmth stayed. Slowly the air between them began to change. It wasn't heavy with sorrow anymore, it was something gentler, something fragile. You know, Ethan said, looking into his cup, after he was gone, I kept thinking about how lucky he was to have you. He talked about you all the time. Said you were the best thing that ever happened to him. Emma looked down, her eyes stinging. He was the best thing that ever happened to me too. Yeah, Ethan said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I know. There was a long pause, and then Emma said something she hadn't said to anyone before. Sometimes I feel like I lost a part of myself with him. Like I don't even know who I am without him. Ethan looked at her with quiet understanding. Maybe you don't have to be who you were before. Maybe it's okay to start being someone new. She stared at him, surprised by how much sense that made. It was something no one else had said to her. Most people told her to move on, as if grief were a door she could simply walk through. But Ethan wasn't telling her to move on. He was telling her it was okay to grow, even if that meant growing around the pain. The fire crackled, filling the silence that followed. Emma's heart felt lighter, though she didn't know why. She studied Ethan for a moment, the way he sat, thoughtful and kind. He looked different now. Not just older, but deeper. There was something about his presence that calmed her, that made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The quiet that filled the room was peaceful now, not empty. I'm glad you came tonight, Emma said honestly. It's been a long time since I talked to someone who really understood. Ethan smiled faintly. I'm glad too. I didn't plan to stop by, I just saw your light on, and it felt like I was supposed to. Emma's lips curved into a small smile. Maybe you were. They sat there a little longer, talking about small things, about how work had been, how her garden was dying because she kept forgetting to water it, about how he still couldn't cook without burning something. Every story brought a little life back into the room, a little laughter between the quiet moments. As the hours passed, something began to shift inside both of them. It wasn't love. Not yet, but it was something close. The first spark of connection after months of loneliness. Emma noticed the way Ethan's eyes softened when he looked at her. And he noticed the way she smiled now. Not the forced smile of someone pretending, but the real one she used to have. When Ethan finally stood to leave, the clock showed past midnight. I should go, he said, his voice gentle. Thank you for coming, Emma said. You reminded me of something I forgot. I still had hope. He smiled, his eyes warm. You always had it, Emma. You just needed someone to remind you. As he stepped out into the night, Emma watched from the doorway. The sky had cleared, and the moonlight fell across the wet street. She felt something inside her she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Maybe even the faint beginning of healing. That night when she went to bed, she didn't cry. For the first time since the accident, she dreamed not of loss, but of life. And when she woke up the next morning, she knew one thing for sure. Ethan's unexpected visit had changed something deep within her. Something that would grow slowly into something beautiful. The fire had burned low, casting a soft amber glow across Emma's living room. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and fresh. Inside, the house felt warmer than it had in months. The night had stretched long, full of quiet conversations and shared memories. Emma and Ethan had moved closer to the fire, their cups empty now, their hands resting near each other on the couch. There was something unspoken in the air, something that neither of them had the words to name. But both could feel. Emma got up to add another log to the fire, and Ethan watched her quietly, taking in the way the firelight flickered across her hair, the way she moved with a gentle grace that still reminded him of David's description of her: strong, kind, and quietly courageous. She turned back to him with a small smile as she set the log into the fireplace. "Better?" she asked. "Much," Ethan said softly. There was something in his tone, a vulnerability that Emma hadn't noticed before. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was more like a quiet longing, a mix of hesitation and hope. She felt it too, the way her heart fluttered at the thought of someone caring about her, again, in a way that went beyond friendship, in a way she hadn't allowed herself to feel in months. They sat in silence for a few moments, listening to the soft crackle of the fire. The conversation had slowed, replaced by a presence that was deeper than words. Both of them knew that this night was more than just shared grief. It was a turning point. "I didn't expect this," Ethan said finally, breaking the quiet. His voice was calm, but there was an intensity beneath it. "I didn't expect to feel this way tonight." Emma's chest tightened. She didn't know if he meant the sadness, the memories, or something else entirely. "This way?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Yes," he said, his eyes meeting hers for the first time in a way that felt direct, honest. "Being here with you. It's like I've been carrying this weight for so long, and now I don't have to carry it alone." Emma swallowed, feeling her own emotions rise. "I know," she said softly. "I've felt it too." The words hung between them, heavy but comforting. It wasn't just grief anymore. There was a connection forming, fragile, delicate, but undeniably real. They had shared the loss of someone they both loved. But now they were sharing something new. A quiet hope that perhaps life could still bring beauty. Even after heartbreak, Ethan shifted slightly closer, careful, almost hesitant. "Emma," he said quietly, "I don't want to ruin anything. I don't want to hurt you, but I can't ignore this feeling." Emma felt a shiver run through her. She knew what he meant, though neither of them had said it outright. It wasn't love yet. It wasn't even romance fully formed. But it was the beginning of something, a spark that had been buried under months of grief. Waiting for someone to uncover it, she took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Ethan, I don't know what's going to happen between us. I don't want to rush anything. But I do know that being here with you tonight, it feels right, safe." Ha! His hand moved slightly, brushing against hers on the couch. Not a bold gesture, but gentle, tentative. She didn't pull away. Instead, she felt a warmth spread through her. A sense of calm she hadn't experienced in a long time. "You're not trying to rush anything," he said softly. "That's what makes this right? That's what makes me feel like I can be here without fear." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, letting the silence speak. The room was quiet except for the fire, but it was alive with an energy that neither of them had expected. It was a combination of relief, understanding, and the subtle thrill of discovering someone new, someone who could see them fully, without judgment and still care. Ethan took a small step closer, his hand resting lightly on the edge of hers. "Emma, I don't know what comes next. I just know that right now, I want to be here with you. I want to share this moment, if that's okay." Emma nodded, her heart beating faster than it had in months. "It's more than okay," she whispered. "I want that too." They leaned slightly toward each other, not out of urgency, but out of a quiet agreement that this moment mattered. Their hands met fully, fingers intertwining naturally, like they had been meant to find each other again. It was simple, gentle, yet powerful in its own way. Neither of them had ever felt such a quiet intensity. For the first time that night, Emma allowed herself to truly breathe. The tension in her chest eased slightly. She realized that healing didn't mean forgetting David. It didn't mean replacing the past. It meant finding someone who could walk beside her. Someone who could understand the depth of loss and still offer light, hope, and care. Ethan's eyes were locked on hers, and she could see the same recognition reflected there. They were both careful, both tender, aware of the fragility of the moment. Yet neither pulled back. They had waited too long for connection, for someone who could understand. And now it was right there in front of them. In the quiet of a living room filled with firelight and memories, I didn't think I'd ever feel this again, Ethan admitted, his voice low. Not after everything. Not after losing him, but you. Being here, talking, remembering, it makes me feel alive again. Emma's lips curved into a soft smile. I feel it too, she said. I didn't think I'd feel alive again either. But tonight, something changed. The rain had been falling since evening, slow and steady, as if the sky itself was tired. Inside his small house at the edge of Portland, Oregon, Emma Carter sat wrapped in a gray blanket, staring at the flickering flames in her fireplace. The house was too quiet. It had been too quiet for 6 long months, ever since her husband, David, died in a car accident on a stormy night not much different from this one. The world had gone on without her, but she still felt stuck in that moment. When everything she loved disappeared in a flash of headlights and rain. The clock on the wall ticked softly. The sound of it filled the empty space where laughter used to live. Emma's hands gripped the mug of tea in front of her, though it had already gone cold. She hadn't noticed. Her mind drifted between memories and silence. David's warm laugh, his terrible singing in the shower, the way he used to burn breakfast every Sunday morning. Those memories came and went like waves, leaving her with the same dull ache each time they faded. It had taken months just to move his things out of sight. His jacket still hung near the door. His books still sat on the shelf beside hers. People had told her to start fresh, to get rid of the reminders. But she couldn't. The thought of removing the last pieces of him felt like losing him all over again. So she left everything where it was, frozen in time, just like her heart. The rain hit harder against the window, and thunder rolled far away. Emma sighed, pulling the blanket closer. She told herself she would go to bed soon. But then it happened, a sound that broke the stillness. Knock, knock. It wasn't loud. But in the quiet of that empty house, it sounded like the world had stopped. Emma froze. Her eyes flicked toward the front door. Who would come here at this hour? For a few seconds, she stayed still, her heart thudding in her chest. Then she slowly stood, placing her mug on the table, and walked to the door. The house creaked under her steps, as if warning her that something was about to change. She opened the door just enough to see who it was, and when she did, her breath caught in her throat. Standing in the rain, drenched from head to toe, was Ethan Miller, David's best friend. The man who used to come over for every football game, who helped David build the wooden fence in the backyard, who gave a speech at the funeral and disappeared right after. Ethan, she said in shock, it's late. What are you doing here? He looked up at her, rain dripping from his hair, his eyes tired and heavy. I know. I'm sorry for showing up like this. I didn't know where else to go. For a moment, Emma didn't know what to say. He looked different, older, somehow. The same kind of sadness lived in his eyes that she saw in her own reflection every morning. Come inside, she said quickly, moving aside. You'll catch a cold out there. Ethan hesitated, as if unsure if he should, but finally stepped in. The warmth from the fire filled the room again, wrapping them in soft light. He took off his wet coat and stood there, uncertain, like a man out of place. I didn't mean to surprise you, he said quietly. I was driving through the city and I saw the lights on. I thought, maybe you'd still be awake. Emma gave a small, careful smile. I don't sleep much these days. He nodded. Yeah, me neither. She led him toward the couch. He sat down slowly, glancing around the room. His eyes landed on the photos, David smiling at the beach, David holding a fishing rod, David and Ethan at a backyard barbecue years ago. His jaw tightened a little, and he looked away. I still can't believe he's gone, Ethan murmured. Neither can I, Emma said softly. Some mornings, I still expect to hear him coming down the stairs. The two sat quietly for a moment, listening to the rain against the windows. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was heavy, but real, like both of them had been waiting for someone who truly understood the same kind of pain. After a while, Ethan spoke again. "I've been meaning to visit. I just didn't know if I should." Emma looked at him. "Why wouldn't you?" He shrugged, staring at the fire. "I guess I thought maybe seeing me would hurt. I remind you of him. We were always together." Her voice softened. "You do remind me of him. But that's not a bad thing, Ethan." Something eased in his shoulders. For the first time, he looked directly at her. There was kindness in his eyes, the same kindness that made him one of David's best friends. But now there was also something deeper, something fragile. "You look tired," Emma said gently. "Are you okay?" He laughed under his breath. "Not really. I left my job last week. Things have been rough. I thought I had a plan, but I don't anymore." Emma's heart softened. "You could have called me. You didn't have to go through this alone." "I didn't think you'd want to hear from me," he admitted. "Well," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "you were wrong." For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly, and the rain began to ease outside. It felt strange, almost peaceful, like for the first time in months there was something more than just grief in the air. Ethan rubbed his hands together. "Do you ever feel like the whole world moved on and you're the only one standing still?" "All the time," she said. He smiled, small but real. "Then maybe I'm not completely crazy." Emma looked at him, and for the first time since David's death, she felt something stir inside her. Not happiness. Not yet, but maybe the faint beginning of it. A reminder that she was still alive. That life hadn't completely stopped. The clock ticked again, and outside the rain faded into a quiet drizzle. Ethan looked around, then at her. "I should probably go. It's late." "Stay for a while," she said quickly, almost surprising herself. "It's been a long time since I had someone to talk to." He nodded slowly. "All right? Just for a bit." She poured him a cup of coffee and sat across from him, watching as he warmed his hands on the mug. The tension that had filled the room at first began to fade. There was something comforting about having him there, someone who knew the same memories, who missed the same person. Outside, the storm slowly cleared, leaving the night calm and quiet. Inside, two old friends bound by grief, comforted by understanding, sat by the fire, unaware that this small, unexpected visit would change the course of both their lives. For the first time in months, Emma didn't feel completely alone. And though she didn't know it yet, that simple knock on her door was the start of a night she would never forget. The rain outside had quieted to a gentle drizzle, but inside Emma's home, the air still carried the weight of the past. The fire burned low, its light soft and golden, stretching across the living room where Emma and Ethan sat opposite each other. It had been a long time since anyone had sat in that chair. She remembered David always used to claim it as his. Now Ethan sat there, shoulders slightly hunched, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold just like hers. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. It wasn't uncomfortable, but full of things neither dared to say. The kind of silence that comes only when two people share the same kind of pain. Emma glanced at him. He looked tired, like someone who'd been carrying more than he could handle. There were faint shadows under his eyes, and a sadness in the way he stared at the fire. "I can't believe it's been 6 months." Ethan said finally, his voice low. "Feels like yesterday we were sitting here, all three of us, laughing about something dumb." Emma smiled faintly. David could always make everything funny, even the worst days. "Yeah," Ethan said softly, "he could." They both fell quiet again, each lost in their own thoughts. For Emma, the memories came easily: summer barbecues, movie nights, long road trips. David and Ethan had been inseparable since college. She remembered teasing them that they were like brothers, and how David would laugh and say, "He's the brother I got to choose." Ethan leaned back, exhaling. "I tried to visit before," he said, his voice breaking slightly. But every time I drove by this street, I couldn't do it. I'd park around the corner, just staring at the house, and I'd freeze. Emma's heart ached. You should have come, she said softly. You didn't have to go through that alone. He looked at her, his eyes tired but honest. I thought maybe seeing me would hurt you. I didn't want to remind you of him. Her throat tightened. Ethan, she said, you don't remind me of the pain. You remind me of the life we all had together. That was a good time. I don't ever want to forget that. Ethan looked away, and for a brief second, Emma saw something else in his expression. Guilt, maybe even regret. He took a deep breath. I keep thinking about that last night. I was supposed to meet him for dinner, remember? He called, said he'd be late. If I had gone to pick him up, maybe don't, Emma interrupted gently. Please don't do that to yourself. He fell silent, his jaw tight. She knew that pain too well, the endless cycle of what-ifs. For months, she had lived in that same loop, torturing herself with thoughts she couldn't change. Now seeing Ethan doing the same broke something inside her. Ethan, she said, her voice soft but steady. You can't keep blaming yourself. It was an accident. None of us could have stopped it. He looked at her, and for the first time that night, his eyes glistened. I just miss him, he whispered. Emma nodded. I do too. Every day. Letting me in, for letting me be here. It means more than I can say. And as he stepped toward the door, she knew that nothing would ever be quite the same. The night had begun with a simple knock, but it had grown into something that neither of them could forget. A moment of connection, gentle yet profound. The kind that starts quietly and lingers in the heart long after it has passed. Emma closed the door behind him, standing in the calm quiet of her living room. She breathed deeply, feeling a mixture of hope, tenderness, and the strange thrill of new beginnings. This was not the end of her grief, nor a replacement for what she had lost. But it was a step forward, a moment that marked the beginning of healing. Trust, and perhaps, in time, something more. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a future where laughter returned, where warmth filled the house again, and where love, gentle, careful, and kind, could find its way back into her heart. That night, Emma realized that some moments arrive quietly but leave a lasting mark. And in the soft glow of the fire, she understood that she had experienced one of those moments. A moment that had changed everything. Morning came softly over Portland. The first rays of sunlight filtering through the sheer curtains and casting a golden glow across Emma's living room. She woke slowly, wrapped in the warmth of the blanket she had fallen asleep under. The room smelled faintly of coffee and wood smoke from the fire, a comforting reminder of the night before. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of calm, almost like the house itself was breathing alongside her. Ethan was sitting in the armchair across from her, cup of steaming coffee in his hands. He looked out the window at the quiet street, the morning mist rising from the sidewalks. When he noticed her stirring, his lips curved into a small, gentle smile, one that made her heart skip a beat even in the soft light. "Morning," he said quietly, his voice calm, almost hesitant. "Morning," Emma replied, stretching her arms and sitting up. She felt the remnants of sleep and the lingering emotions from the night before. Something had shifted, she realized. That night, the weight of grief had eased a little, replaced with a fragile but real sense of hope. "Didn't mean to fall asleep here," Ethan said, holding up his cup like an apology. "The chair. Well, it's comfortable." Emma chuckled softly. "I'm glad you did. It's been a long time since I had company like this." Her voice carried a warmth she hadn't felt in months, and she saw a flicker of relief in his eyes. They spent the early morning talking quietly, their words simple yet filled with meaning. She told him about the garden she had neglected, and he laughed about the time he and David had tried to build a treehouse in the backyard and failed spectacularly. The stories were light, almost ordinary, but they carried an intimacy that only comes from shared memories and trust. Ethan spoke about his life in recent months, the uncertainty at work, the restlessness he had felt, and the emptiness that lingered after David's death. Emma listened, offering nods, soft words, and quiet understanding. She didn't offer solutions because none were needed. He simply needed someone to hear him, to see him without judgment. To share the burden of loss. "You've been through so much," she said at one point, her voice tender. "I don't know how you've kept going." Ethan gave a small shrug, but there was something in his eyes that revealed the truth. "I've kept going because I had to. But tonight, being here with you, it reminded me that life isn't only about surviving. It's about living, feeling again. Even after everything." Emma nodded. She understood perfectly. Grief had a way of numbing the heart, of making the world seem gray and lifeless. But last night had been different. There had been warmth, connection, and the subtle beginnings of something new. Something alive. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while, watching the morning light grow brighter. Emma noticed the way the sunlight fell on Ethan's face, highlighting the depth in his eyes and the kindness in his expression. She felt a strange, beautiful mixture of familiarity and discovery, as if she had known him forever and was learning him anew at the same time. Finally, Ethan stood and stretched, placing his empty cup on the table. "I should probably head back," he said quietly, though there was a reluctance in his tone that Emma recognized. He didn't want to leave this moment, this connection, any more than she did. Emma walked with him to the door, feeling a nervous excitement she hadn't experienced in years. "Thank you," she said softly, "for coming, for staying, for everything last night. It meant more than I can say." Ethan smiled, his eyes warm and sincere. "No, thank you, Emma, for letting me be here, for letting me share this moment with you. It's something I'll never forget." The two stood there for a few seconds, neither wanting to break the fragile magic of the morning. Then Ethan reached out gently, touching her hand briefly, not as a lover, not as a friend alone, but as someone who understood the depth of her heart and the quiet ache she carried. "I don't know what the future holds," he said softly, "but I want you to know I'll be here if you need me. Whenever you need someone." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest, a combination of comfort and anticipation. "I know," she whispered, "and I think I'd like that." Outside, the street glistened with the remnants of rain. The world felt new, renewed, as if the morning itself was celebrating a fresh beginning. Emma closed the door behind Ethan, but the memory of his presence lingered, gentle, powerful, and full of possibility. She leaned against the door for a moment, breathing deeply. She realized that the night had changed something inside her. She wasn't the same person who had sat alone by the fire the night before. Something had awakened, a quiet hope, a willingness to feel again, and the courage to allow someone new into her life. Emma walked back to the living room, looking around at the familiar space. The photographs, the books, the furniture, everything remained the same. Yet the energy of the room had shifted. The house no longer felt empty. It felt alive, like it had been waiting for a spark to bring it back to life. And last night, that spark had arrived. She thought about the way Ethan had looked at her, the gentleness in his voice, and the quiet understanding that had passed between them without a single word needing to be spoken. It was rare to find someone who could understand you so fully without explanation. Someone who could enter your life and leave a mark simply by being there. Emma knew this was only the beginning. She didn't expect everything to change overnight. She didn't need to. But she allowed herself to imagine a future where connection, warmth, and perhaps even love could exist again. Not as a replacement for what she had lost, but as an addition to the life she still had. The morning stretched on, filled with the soft light of a new day and the quiet hum of possibility. Emma took a deep breath and smiled. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace and excitement intertwined, a gentle knowing that the night before had been extraordinary, and that the days ahead could hold new joy. She thought of Ethan one last time before starting her day, not with longing, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Gratitude for a friend, a companion, a kindred spirit who had reminded her that even in the aftermath of loss, the heart could still feel. That even after darkness, the light could return. Emma walked to the kitchen to pour herself a fresh cup of coffee, the warmth of the mug grounding her. She looked out the window at the sun rising over the wet streets and whispered to herself, "Life can be beautiful again." And in that moment, she meant it. The knock on her door the night before had been unexpected, but it had opened a door inside her as well, a door to healing, hope, and the possibility of love. She knew that some nights arrive quietly but leave a mark forever. That night had been one of them, and she would never forget it. With the morning light filling the room, Emma felt ready. Ready to face the world, ready to live again, and ready to let someone back into her heart. For the first time in a long while, the house felt full, not with memories of the past alone, but with the promise of a new beginning. And somewhere deep inside, she smiled, knowing that life, despite its losses and hardships, still had room for joy, for connection, and for unexpected nights that change everything.